Great stuff. Now we see you. Good man. So Dermot, I'm going to start this immediately. Thank you, Dermot McDermot, for giving us your time. Thanks for joining us today. I'm always out on the track, like working with the kids and the parents, doing athletics with so much energy. And I said to the students that one of the reasons we got you in today is because it's important that there are people like coaches like you who give so much and give all that energy and grow the sport and grow the people in it. And I think that's amazing. And when I see you out there, I think this guy has a real passion. So I'm going to start by asking, who is Dermot McDermot? Who are you? Tell us about your history in the sports. Where did it come from?
Well, my background in the sport was like I competed up until I was in maybe third year in school, and then I gave up for probably 10 years and did kind of the teenage stuff and the early 20s stuff, like, you know, and parties and had a bit of crack. And
of course,
then I just got back into competitive running. Then back in 2005, I was based in Dublin, so I got in with a group up in Dublin, and then I got injured in 2009, and I was back home for the summer here in Sligo, and I started just coaching a few kids here, probably 5 or 6 kids and just had a bit of success with them. And I suppose then from there, I just said, okay, I'd resurrect the juvenile element of Sligo Athletic Club, and I just kind of kept going around, just setting up kind of little hubs and groups just around the whole county here. And then I started working with Athletics Ireland, the governing body for athletics in Ireland, in 2010. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And I suppose like I had a lot of energy, and everything was kind of happening kind of slow. And it was more more working with kind of older kind of kids. And my passion was kind of the underage kids and building from grassroots all the way to the top, like, you know. I suppose it was too slow for me, the environment with the institute, with the governing body. So I moved back home to Sligo and kind of just doing little programs with the sports partnership in schools and stuff like that, and just setting up clubs. I set up a club up in Tubbercurry and in Ballymote, and then kind of a lot of kids from Sligo town, and when it grew it then all the way down towards Galway, and kind of touching them back in Mayo, and just kind of started pulling groups of runners and jumpers and hurdlers and sprinters all together, like, you know, and just pooling them into their various different events and kind of just working together like over the years. And so it's
rewind it just a small bit there and just ask you, when you're an athlete yourself, so what is it you do? Is it long distance, middle distance? What is it you focus on?
I was a middle distance runner, and I kind of had a bet on them with my coach at the time, like, you know, he was always mad to kind of get me to embrace cross country and stuff like that. The national short course cross country, like he always wanted me to kind of target that. Like his background was kind of cross country and marathon running, like, you know, so we always had that passion side of things. And I was more speed, like, you know, and like we kind of met halfway, like when I was just running 800s. And back in 2013, he had me run the national short course cross country, and I won the national short course cross country and didn't really get a buzz out of it. So like that was when I just kind of just pulled the plug on it.
Just get you to explain to the students, what is short course cross country?
So like to be kind of long course, like it'd be kind of 10K, 12K, and then the short would be 4 and 6K. They done away with the 4K, so it was 6K. Just that's the one I won, like, so.
And going back then again, what kind of training when you were competing? What's the training look like for you? I just covered in a lecture just before this periodization with the students, talking to them about training year. But how would a training year look like for an athlete like yourself?
So just when I was competing, like, you know, it was predominantly aerobic, like, you know. So like obviously the fitter you are, the more kind of anaerobic type sessions you can take, and the more lactic you can kind of counteract. So like you'd be beating out kind of 60, 70 miles a week. Like the long run built to kind of to steady, like, but starting out, like, you know, at the beginning of, like, say you start back in September or whatever, like, you know, and cross country's in December, you just kind of ease back in the first week or two after a break in the summer. like tempo, like, you know, so tempo would be kind of like operating off threshold, like, you know, so it'd be low millimoles of blood lactic. Like, it's like, I think you're kind of touching in on the physiology side of things. Like, you do hills, like, you know, basically like really getting the heart rate up, and again just improving that lactate tolerance, like in a different way, and just getting general strength. Like,
and can I ask you, what interval training is a big part then of all of this, I presume?
Yeah, like intervals is massive, like, you know, so like the various different types, like you'd work kind of like you'd start off kind of operating at, if you were to take it into race pace, like you're kind of operating at 10-mile race pace initially, like kind of bringing it down to 10K race pace and then 5K race pace, like that real fucking higher end anaerobic side of things, and just building that pace engine. Like,
where does the passion come from in the sport? What is it about athletics that grips people so fervently?
I just think, like, obviously running and exercise in general, like they give you a lot of endorphins, like, and stuff like that. But I think it's more the self progression. Like, you know, we all love to see numbers and we all love to see progress, and whether it's small or it's big, like it just has a very, very good impact on the mind, and just even general life, like, you know, even like, you know, organize your day around your training and stuff like that, and those organizational skills that you inherit, like you bring it into everyday living, like, so you do, like, you know, it's
that's really interesting. So it gives a structure to your day, and it also gives you a sense of achievement.
Absolutely, you know, like that. That is the biggest element, like, you know, like if you're running 15 minutes for 5K and then you bring it down to 14:30, like, you know, it's always that constant striving, like, you know, or if you're running 40 minutes for 10K and you get down to 38 minutes and then down to 37, like the impact, the domino effect, like it has, like, you know, it's brilliant, like, and it's really good for the head, like.
And so it sounds like, you know, that you're really focused now on coaching, and you're also focused on your own training still. But if I kind of go back again a bit and say, like, what was your introduction to physical activity? Like, was it always a good one, or did you know, what was it?
It was at the start, and then my mum was a little bit pushy. But at the start, like I got into it in fifth. Like, I got into athletics in fifth class in primary school, and it was through my teacher at the time. Like, you know, and primary school is always a brilliant place to start. Like, you know, and he kind of, I would have been high energy, like, you know, and he just used to send me out for a few laps, like, you know, and then he used to have an after school training session on the race course, and I used to love just letting loose down there, like just it'd be like, just, I don't know, it's just a release, like, you know, from a young age, just enjoyed the release, like, you know, just being able to sleep at night and stuff, brilliant. Like I'd be quite bouncy and flighty and energetic, like, you know, and I suppose that was the big part initially, like, you know. And then in secondary school, then you kind of you develop new friendships and stuff like that, and your friends aren't into it at all. Like, it's hard, because even though you want to do it, like, it's so much easier if the lads are going for a game of kickabout down the green or whatever after school. Like, just I go for that instead of going to athletics or training that night or whatever, like, you know. It was always kind of pulling to and from. So in secondary school, I really did drop off. Like, it's hard. Like, and like athletics back in the 80s when I was in primary school, like, it wasn't that big. And in the 90s in secondary school, like, athletics, like, there was only 6 or 7 of us doing it in the whole school, and that was at a push. And like, it wasn't really that big back then, like, you know. So I suppose you just gravitated to the soccer and Gaelic, and just fell away from athletics, like, you know. And kind of,
maybe the supports weren't in place at the time.
I think so, yeah.
And can you just tell us about some of the coaching work that you're doing currently?
Yeah, so at the moment, like, I suppose, like any athlete that I fall upon, like, you know, if they're older and they already have their minds made up of what event they want to do, like, I obviously train them for that event. But like the younger generation, like, you know, like, I do a lot of sports hall stuff in communities like in Tubbercurry and in Ballymote, and that whole model is giving kids the whole feel for absolutely everything, like hurdling, jumping, endurance, and, like, you know, have a really wide net, like, but you're giving them all the basic fundamentals to evolve into whatever they want to. I'd never push a kid into an event that they don't want to do. and just kind of take it from there and just build. I like getting a kid young and building from grassroots all the way up, like, you know, and getting them trying different events and whatnot. Like.
And is sports hall athletics, that you mentioned, that is that important?
Absolutely, because it's all disguised basic fundamentals, like, you know, your like little micro hurdles and speed jump, standing long jumps and vertical jumps, and like it's all like they're what you use for testing nowadays, like, you know, it's so basic, but yeah, it's so vital and crucial in terms of athletic development, like, you know, basic athletic development right all the way up to the top, like, you know, it's like they're the basic increments that you need going forward, like, you know, and some of the athletes like that I'd have, like, that are quite successful, like, you know, some of them are bad, like I wouldn't say bad at acceleration, but they're poor accelerators because they didn't come through the sports hall model, that where it just becomes so natural, like, you know, that drive phase is so natural for them. But like if they got into a group at 14, you'd see that they're kind of just a step away from, like, I'm just thinking out loud here of a girl that I've her since she's 14, and there's two girls that I pair her up out of blocks with that came through the sports hall model, and they drop her for the first 10, 15, 20 meters, like, and then it's just the energy systems that you're training then for sprinting that she kind of way, and, like, you know, she comes into her own, like, you know, when she hits that top end speed and the speed endurance side.
So I think this is kind of an appropriate time to ask you about your philosophy towards coaching. What is it like? You bring the kids on. What is it that you think you bring, or that you want to bring to this?
And a real organic type of training, like, style, like, you know, basically like that they're growing naturally, like, so basically you provide the outlet for them to come and train, and if they're turning up to, like, they're gonna progress naturally anyway. Like, if you get a kid at 14, 15, 16, like, it's not a magic wand, like, you know, if they train, they're going to progress. That's like, that basically is, like, there is no real kind of rocket science to it. And, like, there really isn't, like, you know, and a lot of people would say, oh, like, you know, like, I'm doing this and this, and when you break it all down into smaller little increments, like, you know, it's just really back to the sports hall basic stuff, like, you know, the micro hurdles, or like sprinting drills, or a bit of sled, or whatever it is, like, you know, they've done it in a smaller dose, and they've got that embedded in from a young age, like, you know.
Yeah. And I'm going to come to a question here, a good question from a student. So one of the students is asking, is it difficult to keep the kids interested and focused on their training? And how do you overcome this?
The beauty is, okay, like, I've always offered incentives, like, so, like, I've had a good success rate. Like, there hasn't, like, the boys, there's been a bit more drop off, like, because Gaelic, soccer, like, they're pulling in every direction, and I'd never ever have a kid make up their mind on what they want to do. Like, I'd let them just fully decide themselves. With the girls, the girl group there, like, for the last 7, 8, 9 years, it's been there, and it's rock solid, like, you know. And I suppose the reason why they've all been there is they're really tight friends, like, and they operate like a team, even though they are training as individuals and they race as individuals, they race against each other, but it's a team environment, like, where they train on the track 3 days a week together, and then they do the gym or whatever at home, or they go to a local gym when it's open, and the beauty is then they'd have camps. So, like, they go away for 2 weeks at Easter, and that kind of really cements them, like, you know, and they really look forward to that. You have 40 or 50 kids over in Portugal training together, and they really look forward to that, and that really that is a nugget for them. And then I've access to a club in France. They fly them over, like, you know, some of the better athletes, they'd fly them to France, and they get to race in France and be put up in France, and there's all these little incentives along the way, I suppose, and that has been a little bit easier to keep them. It's making it more and more attractive, even though it's a hard one, because you're under the microscope as an athlete, the whole thing, like, you know, because it's you against the clock, and if there's a drop off, it feeds into your own mindset, like, you know, and you feel as if everybody's judging your time or where you're at, but realistically, nobody really is judging you. it's yourself and it's your own kind of drive, and it is your own kind of where you want to be at. Like,
so it sounds like keeping the incentives on the horizon and keeping it fun seems to be what you do generally.
Definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, and even crossing the groups, like the jumpers, the hurdlers, the sprinters, the distance runners, they'd all kind of, on a Saturday morning, we'd all use the IT, like, and they cross over. So they're kind of training more and more as a huge group. And the same on a Wednesday evening, like you could have 40 or 50 core group, but you could have 9 or 10 different sessions operating at the one time, like, so you'd be just kind of switched on to everything. But the older they get, the more they can kind of feed down to the younger ones as well, which is the beauty of it as well. Like, monkey see, monkey do is a big philosophy. Like, like, kids learning from kids is massive for me. Like,
and that brings up then the topic of specialization. So, you start with these kids, they're all in the hole doing, mini athletics, having a great time. Yeah. How does that process work itself out?
Well, with hurdling and jumping, you'd always see a natural knack, like, like basic fundamentals for hurdling, like, you'd sight a hurdler a mile off, like, by the way they sight the hurdles. So, like, you could kind of always steer them towards hurdles, like, but obviously let them again make up their own mind. I'd never turn a kid off any discipline at all, like, but you wouldn't know what hidden talent they'd have. Basically, if they hit a wall, like, so say for example, like, with one of my better sprinters years ago, he broke the Irish junior record in the 60 meters. He'd done everything over 200 meters, and then he was coming out of the junior ranks, and we decided to decide 400. We did a few 400s, but I made the decision for him. I never really kind of asked him if he wanted to move up to 400s. And maybe I was a little bit pushy, but I learned from it. Like, he didn't stay in the sport much longer after. I just don't know, was it that he wasn't ready for the hurt, or was he ready for the work, or he definitely had all the ingredients to be a massive success, but I could say, but maybe he wasn't ready for that yet. And maybe I was a bit too pushy. So I was quick in learning that I have to take a step back and let them kind of evolve and make up their own decisions, like,
And that's kind of interesting, because it does seem that in athletics, sometimes burnout, even amongst young athletes, is an issue. Yeah. What's your position on burnout or rest and recovery? How do you manage that with?
I'd be massive for rest. Like, it's like if they do a hard session, like, like get the food, like protein food in straight after, feed up, relax, like, and like even with the distance runners, like I keep everything as fresh as possible, because like burnout is mental, like, I never over race the athletes, like, on the athletic side, burnout is predominantly from the racing side, like, it's just constantly getting yourself up and then to come down after the race and then up again to come down again, and it's just that constant anxiety and the nervousness feeling, like, that's where the burnout comes in athletics, like, it's just that up down, up down, up down, up down, like, you would have a few that would be overtrained, like, and stuff like that. I'd be sharp. I'd see elements, like if I had a few leaving cert students, I'd always back off. Like I'd have it phased into my training, like, back off times. They're growing, and like, like I'd have little cues, like, if a kid's growing, you can hear by the way they're, like on the sprint drills, by the way they're planting into the ground. If there's no force going into the ground, they're obviously kind of coming into a growth spurt because they're not able to put that force into the ground. So you just pull back.
Yes. So it's very interesting what you said about the burnout being predominantly mental, that big build-up, and then you have to kind of work yourself back down again. How do you, or what tips do you give to athletes to manage that anxiety or to get through it in a smoother fashion?
Like have something outside of the sport. Like, it can't be all just athletics, like, or whatever sport they're doing. Like, it can't be all about that sport, because then it becomes an obsession, and like that mental obsession then can really take over your life, and then you don't actually enjoy anything else. And then, like, it becomes a little bit torturous going to training, going to races, and then if you have a little dip in a race, that festers and you start kind of nearly resenting the sport, and that's kind of plays in the background. So you're better off having something outside of the sport to just to home into and enjoy, like whether it's going to movies or even a night out. Like like one of the girls now, like I'd always tell her, like, okay, we'll take Sunday as your rest day. You're 20, like, you know, go out and enjoy your Saturday night, like, you know, and feck it, like, you know, and like 9 times out of 10 she won't, but she has that option. It's not like a stick held over you. You have to do that, like, you know. It's just
getting some perspective on it.
A balance. It's the balance of a 20-year-old, like, you know, they have to enjoy life as well, like.
And another question here is, in the last 10 years, I see a lot more people, and everyone does, out running generally, you know. Can you talk about how sort of maybe recreational athletics, how you've seen it change in the last 10, 20 years?
Like, they're definitely 100%, like, there's so much more people out running, like, and I suppose, like, I think it's a hell of a lot, like, it's very, very accessible, like, you know. It's like running, you can basically run anywhere you want. You can do it anywhere, like, you know, you could be on your way to Dublin, you could, if you wanted to get out of the car halfway and just go for a little run, you can go, like, you know. It's on the radios, like, I suppose the promotion of running and the benefits to your mental health and counteract obesity and the impact, and I suppose the kids are doing it more and more, and they're impacting their parents, and it's just, I suppose, just goes about in cycles, like, you know. And I suppose you need to run for every sport as well, like, you know. So if you're a Gaelic footballer or a soccer player, like, that general fitness, like, you know, you will run, like, you know, to improve that general fitness, like, you know.
And have you seen that then as a growth in kids coming to training with you? Has that
absolutely, yeah. Oh yeah, like, even on lockdown, like, you know, the first lockdown, like, I kind of set up virtual clubs online and everything, like, so I did. And at one stage, like one of the weeks, like, I had a challenge and there was 1,024 kids.
Wow.
Everything. Wow. Like, I didn't know half of the kids at Adam, and I actually had to get a new phone because it was a challenge, right? To send back a video, and it just blew my whole phone. Like, my phone was just constantly hopping with videos and everything like that. So yeah, I pulled the plug and downsized again very lively, and just got people just to kind of coordinate stuff kind of in their own clubs and stuff like that. I just kind of took on a little bit too much initially and brought it back to that. But I suppose, like, with, like, the impact of, like, the sports partnership kind of would have initiatives in Sligo, and they'd have going into schools, and kids get a flavour of it. Like, and once kids get a flavour of something and they like it, or if they're told, if you tell a kid they're good at something, they'll be knocking on your door. Like if I go into a school and if I told 10 in a class that you'd be a brilliant runner, within 3 days you'd have a phone call or an email or a text off a parent saying you're in kids' school and they want to follow up athletics, like, you know. And it's a massive, it's a huge thing, like, it's massive. That positive response to a kid, like, you know, can really impact their thinking and follow up.
That's interesting, that whole idea that it builds your self-belief and your confidence in yourself as well.
Absolutely massive, like, you know. Like, where I'm working now, I'm working in a primary school as a special needs assistant, and I'm assigned to a class. It's a 5th class this year, and the beginning of the year in September, I tested all the kids over a kilometre. On the second day they were back, and the class average was 6:39. So that was the whole average. So it was a class of 23, and the whole class added up and divided by 23, and it was 6:39. By Christmas, the class average was down to 4:27. Wow. So the whole average, like, you know, with the fastest kid in the class was down to 3:38 for the kilometre. These are 5th class kids, but it just shows you. And all it was 20 minutes a day. So, like, one day we work on biomechanics and a bit of plyometrics, just strengthening the body to be able to carry themselves for the kilometre distance. One day we do aerobic. So the aerobic day, they'd be just jogging along, chatting with their friends for 20 or 30 minutes. And, like, they could go any pace they wanted. And things out of 10, kids are competitive naturally. So, like, they would actually jog nearly in competition with each other, but within themselves, just chatting. Then another day we do strength endurance. Then another day we do a speed day. And then another day, then, like, you know, it'd be just kind of kilometre specific type work, like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 harder runs, like, you know. And the impact was absolutely massive in class then. Like, you know, you'd have girls, like, you know, that would be mice, like, they wouldn't put up their hands or anything. And they'd be up answering everything, and like the impact that it has in their schoolwork and everything. It's just unbelievable to watch the impact of the whole sport. And you know, like I bring it back to me own, like in athletics, like, you know, like girls and boys that wouldn't be sporty by just doing the 20 minutes a day athletics, they'd be involved playing soccer on the yard and playing games after school, and it's just massive. Like it's just huge. Like the confidence, like it's unbelievable.
And I suppose in an individual sport like athletics, there's this idea that you're doing something for yourself, and so you're learning to take self-control.
It is, and the beauty of the kilometer, like although it was a class average, everybody had their own individual time. If they ran 8 minutes on day one, they wanted to get below 8 minutes the next time, and then they want on the third test they wanted to go down to 7.5, and they wanted to, like, and kept kicking on and kept kicking on. The slowest in the class ended up at 5:17. Like the improvements was just absolutely unnatural, like, you know, and that's only 20 minutes a day. So it just shows you, like, you know, that like anything can be achieved by just kind of just a little bit of structure and just even just educating the kids, like, you know, like, you know, at different times, like, and like the biggest thing is, like, you know, if they run for 2 minutes hard and they're a minute in and they're, oh, this is awful hard, this is hard, but again, it's not going to be hard forever, like, you know, like pain passes, like, you know, pain is a memory, like, you know, it's forgotten, like, you know, in running terms, like after a run, like you get your breath back and you're good to go again nearly, like, you know, but that's where you're at in your mind, and you educate them on how quickly you adapt.
So it's amazing what you can achieve with focus on process and then putting in a structure in place. So then I want to come to a question, which is, if you take a group of kids and they're all like early teens interested in middle distance running, you know, and you have them from September, you know, through the year, what kind of work are you going to do with them? What's it going to look like?
If they're early teens, like, you know, you position it off kind of maybe 2 really easy days and 2 kind of session days, like, you know. So basically, if you're starting out in September, you'd have the 2 aerobic days. It might start off with just like, you get them to do homework, like, you know, that's like in an individual sport, you have to have some onus, like, and some accountability to yourself, like, you know. You get them just doing a little bit of homework kind of for longer term for development, like, so you'd have to find it starting out maybe 2 10-minute runs at home on the week. You might just have them doing like maybe 10 by 30 seconds, like, you know, just striding out, just watching the way they run. And then for the second session, then, like, you know, it'd be kind of just a little bit tempo based, like, you know, basically where you might be getting them to do 4 by 3 minutes steady off a short rest, but the steady running, like, where they're able to just about chat, recover and go again, like, you know, and then you're growing it from there, like, you know, you're watching how they move. Okay, if they're dropping or if they're mechanically bad, you might emphasize a little bit more on the drill side of things, like, you know, maybe for the first kind of drills and speed, because speed helps. Like when you incorporate drills and a little bit of speed, when you sprint, like, you're nearly forced into kind of running a little bit more naturally, like, and a little bit better, like, you know, when you're running at say 45 or 50% of your natural norm, like, you know, the biomechanics kind of, you're nearly tripping over yourself, so you kind of you kind of get awkward nearly, like, you don't know what way to carry yourself, like, you know, so you kind of, you just bring everything back to kind of basics and grow it from there, like, you know. It's just over, and you kind of, if they're accept, like, say in that crop, if there was an exceptionally good one, you say, okay, they potentially could win in All Ireland schools this summer and miles ahead of where somebody else is, you wouldn't hold back on them, like, you'd say, okay, I'll incorporate these in a group that's a little bit more advanced, like, and let them pull on, like. So, like, I'd always have a group that are older up to be able to drop a kid into, like, you know, and just get that little bit more. And there's a huge learning in it for kids as well, like, you know, because the kids that they're learning from have been there where that kid is as well, like, you know. So again, that's that organic kind of flow, like, you know, where they're learning from the top all the way down.
That's really great info for the students here, who are aspiring coaches, most of them. So can I just go back to a very fundamental question, which is the mechanics of running? What are some of the things which we should look out for or work on?
If okay, like, so if you bring the drills into it, so like in on the speed side, okay, like I just use kind of simple enough ones. A skip is just basically where you bring your knee up to parallel and then you drop your foot down, but you're looking to put force into the ground. B skip then is where you're sending the foot out a little bit more and then you're bringing it back. You want to try and, like, the whole idea of drills, okay, is basically to teach foot plant, so driving into the ground, and to try and teach the foot to land back a little bit. So you think about it, if you want to go up into the air, you push down into the ground. So that's vertical. If you want to drive forward, you got to try and plant back.
Can you highlight somebody, an idol of yours, for example, who the students could look at on YouTube, perhaps? Who is an idol in terms of middle distance, who you would say, look at this guy?
On the middle distance right now would be the Ingebrigtsen, the whole Ingebrigtsen model. Like, you know, there's actually documentaries on them and all. Like, and on the physiology side, you learn a lot from the Ingebrigtsen model. It's real intense now. Like, it's like, I don't think any Irish athlete would be able to tolerate like the level that the father has them at. Like, it's like he gets them cross country skiing when they're practically able to walk, develop the aerobic side. He created these, like, you know, he created these superstars like from a very, very young age. It's like the Williams sisters in the tennis, like the dad created them. Like, you know, like, so the Ingebrigtsens on the middle and long distance side, on the sprint side, Dan Paff or Lauren Seagrave are very, very good. Like Dan on acceleration and Lauren Seagrave on front side mechanics. So like Lauren Seagrave is a big believer on, like, you know, cutting out any backs mechanics. So everything is out in front. And that's kind of like with B-skip and all the sprint drift, teaching that kind of neat tie pop. So like you're popping the tie and then you're pedaling down and pulling the ground back behind you.
Yeah. So this is really good information because the students can have a look, can do some research into these names that you're mentioning here. But what we'll have to do is we'll have to get you on campus when we can after the pandemic, and we'll do an introductory session looking at mechanics. I'm going to get back now to another question from a student. Ryan's asking a very good question. So a lot of them are Gaelic football players. So he's saying here, often in Gaelic football, I feel like the best players are more naturally talented, or more naturally physically talented than others, in the sense they're just bigger and stronger and faster. How much of a success in middle and long distance running is down to genetics and natural ability?
It's not really, like, you know, it's like we're all born the same. And like what you do, like I always notice, okay, so basically when we go into primary school or whatever, if you have a fast kid in a class and you're playing chasing on the yard, the bloody whole class are nearly fast because they're chasing this bugger all the time. Like, you know, and the best way to train speed is to run fast. So like, you know, it's nearly pot luck what class you're put in primary school on one side, then what you do outside of school. If you're growing up in an area where there's no kind of, if it's concrete jungle and you've no access to kind of like playgrounds where you're developing those kind of movements like climbing and jumping and everything naturally, you're kind of already kind of getting a little bit handicapped going forward, like, you know, in terms of kind of like what you can evolve into. But the thing about it is, like, I had a lad in 6th class here in primary school, and when he was in 6th class in primary school here, he got into running. He was a mechanical mess. He never did sport in his life. Now, when the penny dropped, that year, he was 10th in the primary school cross country in Sligo, which is an okay level, but it's not the greatest level in Ireland. That 2 weeks later, he was 54th in the Connacht primary school cross country. But fast forward a year, when the penny dropped with that kid and you kind of made adjustments, okay? The following year, he broke the championship record in the All-Irelands in the 600 metres. He ran 1:32, so it was a million miles on from where he was ever at. And he won the All-Ireland clubs cross country, which is the most competitive bloody event you can win.
Wow.
So it's basically like it's all to do with luck as well. Like, if he wasn't in the school I was in, he would never have got into athletics. He would never have known what he best. Like, it's all different, and as well as that as well, things like he was quite a big child as well, like, you know, so he was kind of well developed. Like, there's another lad I have there, Michael Morgan, who was nowhere in growing up until under 14. He kind of did a little breakthrough at Connacht. Under 15, he grew a little bit more. He was very small and light, like, you know, and like human demeanor has a lot to do with it as well, like, you know, their drive and everything then on top of it.
Yes.
Like he only blossomed really kind of when he hit intermediate in school, when he was about 15, like, you know, and he started to develop more as physically, like, you know, and then he just took off. Like, you know? But it's very, very easy to drop away, getting a few hidings, like, you know, locally even, like, you know, at under 12, under 13, under 14. But if you can educate them, like, you know, that basically, okay, you look at him and you look at him, like, it's not always going to be that way. When you're under 17, there's going to be more of a matchup, like, you know, so just persevere, like, you know, perseverance is massive.
Yeah, so that's very interesting what you say about the person who has the right mentality, you know, because the person who has the right mentality, they may continue in the sport, where maybe you have a naturally gifted person who just drops out, you know, for various different factors, you know.
Yeah, but even getting back to the question about, like, you know, you see people on a Gaelic pitch that are more naturally faster. You don't know what they're doing in the background as well, like, you know, like they could be in an athletic club, or they could be just online researching, like, how do I get faster, or how do I jump higher, or how do I do X, Y, or better, like, you know. You don't know what they're kind of doing to make themselves better, because even in team sports, we are all individuals, like, so you do have an onus to make yourself that bit better, like, you know.
I'm going to get to, there's a good question here from Oren, and he says, is it too late to get back into a sport aged 20 to 21?
Absolutely not. I only got back into it when I was 26. And then, like, I won my first national title when I was 32. So 100% definitely not. Definitely. Yeah. It's never, ever too late. The beauty is, if you do something when you're younger, like, basically, and you lay all the foundations, it'll only take you kind of about 6 to 8 months to get back to where you were, like, even if you were kind of quite a bit of time away. Like, and the thing about it is, like, you know, what you've gained in your early teens and later teens in a sport, it'll last a lifetime, like, you know. So it's never too late to flip back into it, like, you know.
Can you tell us a bit about your journey then, getting to the national title from taking the sport back up again?
Yeah, like the first year I got back into sport was, I didn't really understand it, really, like, you know. Like, I was very good when I was a kid, but I just hated it. I just my mum was a bit pushy, and I probably didn't like the pressure of it, to be honest, like. And then I just dropped away, and, like, none of my friends were doing it either, like, you know, so I just dropped away from it. And I suppose then I moved to Dublin with a job when I was about 2005. I was 24. And I just started jogging a little bit, just kind of with a mate and stuff like that. And the following year, then I just got in with a coach, a man that I really admire growing up and stuff like that. And I just bumped into him, and he just said, "You look quite athletic to me now." And I said, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Why don't you rock up to my group there on a Tuesday night?" So I joined this group on a Tuesday night, and then it just kind of evolved over time. Like, I was running 800 meters, and I was the first year I was back. See, I never lost my speed, and speed will never leave. Like, you know, okay, we might forget how to sprint, or we might like, it's all muscle memory. Like, you know, we forget to do things, like, you know. But the thing about it is, it doesn't take long to click back into place, like, you know. And I suppose my second year back, I was third in the national senior indoors over 800 meters, and I just really wanted to be an 800 meter runner and stuff like that. But to kind of cut a long story short, I suppose I had a lot of consistent years of training and stuff like that. And my coach now just says, "Okay, let's target this short course cross country." Like, he's always wanted me to do that. Like, and I'd always done cross country, kind of to condition the body anyway, like, you know, and stuff like that, without any real emphasis on the cross country. But this time, okay, he put emphasis on it, and just like, I suppose, just still a lot of luck in winning races sometimes, especially cross country. Like, you know, everything has to go right on the day, like, you know. So
yeah, that's an interesting journey. I'm going to get to a question here from Olton. Olton's asking, what's your favorite part of coaching?
Just seeing progression, like, just watching kids progress and just coming out of themselves, and just developing friendships, and that side is a beauty to me. Like, you know, I really, really do. Like I treat every single person the same, like, everybody, whether they're targeting an Olympic Games or they're targeting kind of just basically improving a 10K time. I'd always just give everybody the same level of time and commitment, like, you know, as I would, like, you know. And just like, even if I was burnt by somebody in the morning, like, I wanted to join the group again, like, 3 years down the road, absolutely, door is always open to everybody, always, like, and no matter what. Like, even I had a young lad that won an under 13 national 60-meter hurdles, and he gave up after it, and I was there, oh man, feck it. But like, the thing about this, his passion was soccer, and I know he hit a little bit of a wall there soccer wise, like, he's going on 17 in October, like, so he was kind of 4 years away from athletics, like, and like, there now, about 3 months ago, he came back into the group. And I know it's only to improve his soccer, but he'll still have a place kind of in the group. Like, now the group is only kind of 3, like, they're all meeting kind of in 3s and 2s, like, at the moment, like, so
yeah,
like, it's a little bit less effective, but he has an impact for the girl that I have him training with, like, because she was kicking his ass initially, and now he's kicking her ass, so he's bringing her back up again, like, and it has a good impact for him, and it also has a good impact for her. It works both ways, like, so everybody has a place in every group, like,
So it sounds like a very constructive process, and it sounds like coaching is, you enjoy watching people come on, but not just that. It sounds like it's a lifestyle for you.
Yeah, it's embedded in my. Yeah. In the morning, I get up at, I say, we babies, like, so I get up quite early, and I'd start sending out the programs for the week, like, so everybody knows what they're doing on any one day. So like, some of them are training remotely, some I'm kind of still meeting within my 5K, or like, after school here now, I'm able to train up in 4 like, so I'd have kind of coming in 2s, like, maybe for 2 or 3 hours a day, and like, still getting the work in, like, because I like to kind of keep them kind of race, like, not race ready, but 6 weeks away from ever been race ready, like, so when things open up, that they're kind of 6 weeks away from kind of an ability to knock it out of the park.
Here's a really relevant question to right now, and it's coming from another student. Oren's asking, how has the pandemic affected coaching?
Oh, it's been tricky. So it has, like, it's been kind of training in, like, I'm living in Ballastolaire, so it's been training in Union Wood as opposed to kind of 400-meter track. We don't have a 400-meter track at all. That's closed. So some of the longer, faster runs, I have a few athletes that are allowed travel, and I'm allowed travel because they've represented Ireland or whatever. So we've a letter from the federation. So we go down to Ballina and train down there. Screen is right beside me. So we use that for kind of flat, straight runs. And then Fort Hill is great, like, 200-meter flat track. Like, it's good for kind of the stronger, kind of slower runs, the longer, slow runs, like, so it's really, so it is.
And what about the younger kids then? How have they been affected at that kind of base level?
That's been taking a massive hit, and that will take a hit across all sports. I think grassroots is gone. Like, I've kind of kept everything going virtually. So I've set up groups in different locations. I encourage them to kind of partner up sometimes, like, where they're living next door or down the road from somebody, just operating in pairs. But they're kind of doing kind of 20 minutes a day, kind of Monday to Friday, kind of incorporated into their schoolwork. When they go back to school, it'll just go back to kind of Wednesday and Saturday. I'll send them on a session, and they'll do it, like, on their doorstep, like, and it will be kind of sports all related type. You can make up their kind of little obstacle courses or whatever, like.
I'm aware that you're at work and you're going to have to go back soon, so I'm going to ask 2 really important questions. One of the final questions I'm going to ask is, what do you see as some of the emerging trends in athletics at the moment? Are there things to look out for in the future? Are there things changing in the sport?
There's a lot more girls, like, coming right through. Like, I think we're going to have an exceptional, and sprinting. I suppose, with all the sharing of information online and stuff like that, I think sprinting in Ireland has, after hitting a massive height, especially on the female side. Again, female side on everything, like, girls are really kicking asses, lads' asses. So there's a massive impact going forward. Like, I think we could have relays, like, 4x1 and 4x4 at the next Olympics, and very, very competitive, like, and it's absolutely brilliant. Like, I think the impact as well of, like, immigrants coming to Ireland, like, and really ramming up the performance levels, like, because they are naturally just so much better than us, like, they really are. And then you have a training model to them, they really take off, but they're creating a more and more competitive environment back here, like, so it, like, Ireland is, on the sprint side, it's got way, way, way more competitive. So it is, like, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant to see, like.
that's three big trends. That's great and very interesting. Final question for you.
Yep.
All of these guys are aspiring coaches. Tips for aspiring coaches.
Keep it simple. Like, keep everything so simple. Like, it is so, and keep your session like say for example, okay, if you have a group of 6 to 10-year-olds, keep the session short. Like, predominantly, like, incorporate all your fundamentals into your warm-up and keep the same warm-up. Like, so you could have a real effective session in 40 minutes. 20 minutes of that is the same warm-up every single week. So the kid is creating the same familiarities. And when a kid is familiar with something, you have total buy-in. Like, they really are. They're not kind of anxious about a new kind of drill or anything like that. Like, they're well able to perform it. And that constant repetition gets them doing what you're doing. And the second part of that session then is the body of the session, whether you're training an energy system or you're training like if it's a hurdling session or a jumping session or whatever you want to mold that into, but it's only 20 minutes. It's just easier for you as a coach, especially starting out, to keep the kids interested. Like, you know, I could have 60 to 80 kids in a sports hall session on my own, and it's just straight lines in a hall. I could have 10 lines of 8 kids, and they're all just performing the drill one after the other, like robots, follow the leader, up and down the hall, like, you know, and they absolutely love it. And then I set obstacle courses again in straight lines. You can embed any single drill anywhere. It's just adapting to your environment and keeping it so simple. Like,
that's great. So keep it simple. The familiarity is important. And then what would you
enjoy it? Enjoy it is a big thing as well. Enjoy every bit of it.
And what would you say then in terms of learning? You know, how should the students approach learning as a coach?
Keep learning. Have an open mind. Pick people's brains, like, you know. So if there's an area that you want to learn, like, you know, there's a coach called Randy Johnson. He's mentoring me on the long jump side. Like, you know, it's funny how, like, I was asked to take on this Moroccan girl, and it was through him. She approached him, but he couldn't commit to it, and she wasn't. Like, this man is coached the world record holder in the long jump, and she's not at that level. Like, she's at a high school level here in Ireland, like, you know. And he goes, is there any way? He got onto a friend of his that's a friend of mine, and he says, is there any way he could take her on? And he goes, I know a man that'll take her on. So she's coming over to me in April here from Morocco, and as in turn, he's going to mentor me more on the long jump side of things, because I haven't nailed the long jump. Like, I've kept everything kind of general on the long jump side of things, and I have some really good long jumpers. So I think broaden your horizon, ask questions. Don't be afraid. If you Google the king of speed or whatever, like, you know, if you want to go down the speed side of things, and say a coach in the UK comes up, research him and try and get his email address and send him questions, like, you know, and develop a relationship and tell him what you're doing, and he'll come along and, like, say, maybe try this or this, and be open-minded. And, like, you're learning every single day, and the best people to learn from are the people in front of you, like, you know, your kids or your athletes, like, you know, like 100%, like, you know. I'm coaching a lady at the moment. She's gone to 2 Olympic Games, and I've had her now the last year and a half. So after going to 2 Olympic Games, now I have to try and get her to another one. She's 43, and the Olympic standard has gone from 2:37 down to 2:29. So I have to try and improve. So straight away, I'm just trying to improve the turnover and everything like that. Like, you know, and like in my head, I'm just saying, okay, if this lady improves, man, she's going to be happy anyway. Yeah. I not put pressure on myself or anything like that. And she's loving the training. I built my whole group around her now, like, you know, and the knock on for them is massive, because she really raised the standard in the group. And it's like, it's massive, but she's not too, like, she comes along, she doesn't think she knows it all. So she's really open-minded to my type of training, and it's a win-win for everybody that we're all working with, like, you know. And the beauty, like, I'm picking Rob Heffernan's mind on the coach. He's been really successful in the scoring side of things, and just making sure I'm getting it right. And, like, you know, and he'd come back and say, maybe try this as opposed to that on that day. And, like, it's open-end communication, like, you know. And
So you're learning all the time in order to meet those margins, you know, those.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You got to, like, you know, because you're working with so many different individuals, like, and the same thing isn't going to work for everybody as well. Like, you know, 90% of it will, but like, you know, you still got to kind of evolve into the person that you're working with world as well. Like.
Look, Dermot, I think we're going to leave it at that because it's a really good point to finish on. And the reason it's really good is because we're talking about learning from others. And I think, I'm not just saying it, but I think that the information you've given us today is invaluable and the students will have learned an awful lot from it. So we can't thank you enough. I'll be in touch with you about doing a session with us.